Today's episode contains discussions of sexual assault and sex trafficking. Please use discretion when listening, and please take care of yourself.
Before we begin today's episode, we had a super important announcement to make. RAF had early on publicly chosen to endorse Jay Carey for U.S. Congress to represent us in Washington in the upcoming election on May 17th. And at this time, I'd like to announce that I'm making the same decision. Since that's a decision we've both made, that means that Fire on the Mountain podcast has decided to publicly endorse Jay Carey for Congress and support his campaign in any way that we can. Jay and Leslie, if you're listening, let us know how we can help. And for the folks at home, this primary is critical and every single vote matters.
It does. And again, Election Day, y'all, is
May 17th.
So we're going to keep you updated on opportunities available to help Jay Carey in the primary and to work to unseat Congress Baby Cawthorn. But for now, without further ado,
let's light it up.
In today's episode, we will talk briefly about a couple of new projects in our area, the latest national concerns about hometown public enemy Madison Cawthorn, charter schools coming to the area backed by Evangelical dollars, and our guest this week is Monica Griffin, National Trafficking Survivors Advocate.
I'm Gina Baxter.
And I'm Rafael Morales.
And this is Fire on the Mountain.
Cool. Is that good? So just briefly, a diesel fuel spill has affected the waters in Henderson County parks. On April 22nd, officials cited, quote, an abundance of caution and recommending that people and pets stay out of the water in Jackson Park for 1 week, but feel free to use your discretion here. Also, in somewhat mysterious news from WLOS, we learned that an unnamed company is interested in bringing a new project to Hendersonville. The project site would be located at what is currently Berkeley Mills Park on Balfour Road, and the company's identifying details are being withheld until or unless there is movement on the project. A public special hearing held Thursday, April 21st, brought very little further clarity, although City Manager John Connett reassured us that, quote, the council is very much in tune with what type of projects they feel would be good for the community, end quote. So just another reminder of why local elections are so important. Y'all, this deal's going to happen without our direct input, and our representatives will be deciding all of this for us. We did learn that the proposed project would take over 22 acres of Berkeley Mills Park and cause it to be redesignated. We also know the company is going to create 117 new jobs with an average wage of more than $52,000 a year between 2025 and 2027.
And continuing our recent conversation about education in our area, we are not pleased to share with you that yet another charter school funded by John Bryan's own Challenge Foundation is coming to Western North Carolina. Bryan's $37 million family trust also funded the development of Lake Lure Classical Academy, Thomas Jefferson Classical Academy in Rutherford County, Brevard Academy, and Piedmont Community College Charter School in Gastonia. The Lincoln County Charter School also has received grants from the foundation. So the plan right now is for the school, which will be called Flat Rock Classical Academy, if you'll catch the theme, is set to be in the old Valley Hill School building. The website's homepage shows a video called, quote, Teaching for Virtue, and it is exactly what it sounds like.
Teaching for Virtue. John Bryan himself, who heads the trust and has spoken at retreats held by the Koch brothers, started the Challenge Foundation in 2005 to, quote, help eligible charter schools evolve into superior scholastic institutions. Their mission statement verbatim says that they work with schools to help facilitate, quote, land acquisition and financing at below market rates, end quote. That's in their mission statement, verbatim.
It's just right there up top. It's
They're not even hiding it. There's no reason to hide it.
Nope. Yeah, that's the thing. They know that there's no reason to have to hide it. So in 2009, the Bryan family and the Challenge Foundation donated between $10,000 and $50,000 to conservative think tanks like the Cato Institute, Americans for Prosperity, the Heritage Foundation, and the Federalist Society. They also spent $10,000 to help produce The Cartel, which is an anti-public education documentary that the Challenge Foundation itself described as exposing, quote, corruption, waste, and intimidation in the nation's public schools, which is particularly stingy now that we are all aware of the sacrifices that educators have to make every day. Another $10,000 grant went to a group that planned to send all school districts in the country a film questioning the science behind global warming and and to promote coal propaganda, asking what, quote, working families whose livelihoods are dependent on energy production will do if we go ahead with a Green New Deal. Also, the Challenge Foundation Thomas Jefferson Classical Academy in Rutherford County is very closely linked to John Bryan. We know that his own daughter was one of 9 members of the board of directors there. So that means that she was making decisions about the school's curriculum, management, and the $7.6 million in public funds that the school runs on. And she was there until 2014. And then she was replaced by Laura Thomas, who works for, guess who, Raph?
I'm going to take, what is the Challenge Foundation for 800, Gina?
Ding, ding, ding. You got it. The Challenge Foundation.
Nice. I'll take $800 whenever it's convenient.
Whenever it's convenient. Y'all heard it here first.
Whenever Gina has conveniently $800.
Yeah. If y'all patrons could come through.
Yeah, feel free to donate to the podcast at our Patreon.
And then I will be out of debt with Raph, so thank you. Something else of note is that the Thomas Jefferson Classical Academy doesn't participate in the federal lunch program. So families who choose to attend the school pay $675 a year at full price for lunch. So there's all kinds of potential barriers for families. A member of the board there said in an interview that the charter school serves, quote, the poorest of the poor in Rutherford County. But we know that charter schools are not required to keep track of student and family income like public schools are. So we're not quite sure how he came to that assessment, and when pressed, he was unable to provide that information.
Well, it's because he obviously understands that only the poorest of the poor live in Rutherford County. It is crazy, the backflips that these people do to appeal to people that they're openly exploiting.
That's correct. Yes.
All I can say is that for $675 a year, they better not be getting pizza squares and those little chicken nuggets.
Man, I love the pizza squares and the chicken ring things.
The chicken ring. We ate them off your finger. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to...
Wait, hold up. Before we move on, I just want to say that you know it's bad. You know that the school lunch program is absolutely terrible. When you as a child consciously look forward to those terrible pizza squares, that's the lunch you look forward to.
And that has been designated by the state as a healthy meal.
They hit the food pyramid.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we should dive into the food pyramid one of these days.
We should. And the Got Milk in schools.
Scam. Yes.
Like how in the world Got Milk was like a federally supported marketing. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's the FDA, baby.
Yeah. So, onward.
But not upward.
But not upward. Jesus. I don't know why, but somehow in the script, it's always me that ends up talking about fucking Madison Cawthorn.
I don't know why. That's so weird. Who does this? Who does the script?
Who writes the script? Who does this? It's Gina. Gina writes the script. So, today, while we record, which today is Tuesday, April 26th, we have actually more recent breaking news, which I'm sure by the time anybody listens to this will be old and they'll all be sick of hearing about it because overexposure is real. But as of right now, Madison Cawthorn was again highlighted in national news, and not just for carrying now a loaded firearm, a loaded 9mm, into the airport in Charlotte, but in Mother Jones for his campaign spending. For those that are listening that don't know, which I'm sure are few and far between, Madison Cawthorn is a Republican who represents us in Washington here in the U.S. Congressional District in Western North Carolina, which is the 11th. And he's made it a point to rail against colleagues who, quote, love wasting your hard-earned tax dollars. But he appears to have used more taxpayer money on lodging and food related to his staff retreat than almost anyone else in Congress. So members of Congress are permitted to fund annual staff visits to their home district, while just over half, or 286 of Congress's 435 members, spent nothing on such retreats. According to the Washington Examiner, Cawthorn spent just shy of $5,000, almost 5 times the average spent by the 147 other offices that allocated money to such events. House disbursement records show that only Representative Kay Granger, who also happens to be a Republican from Texas, spent more. The largest single expenditure by Cawthorn's office was $2,950 to Skylarana, a resort just outside of Asheville, North Carolina that describes itself as a, quote, boutique mountain hotel with, quote, luxury suites. In the same week, in early August, the Examiner explains Cawthorn billed taxpayers $556 for 4 separate grocery runs, $491 after a trip to Papa's and Beer, 2 visits to Chick-fil-A totaling $382. And you know that shit, that's a discount price.
That's a discount price because Joel Benson is still on the campaign team.
A purchase at Joey's Bagels for $53, a stop at Bojangles costing $47, and 2 undescribed payments totaling $455 to his Citibank government card service. If you're listening to this, that is your tax money, and this is how they spend. It's in the media now to talk about Elon Musk buying Twitter. Everybody wants to talk about Elon Musk buying Twitter, but we could also talk about how our tax dollars are being spent so frivolously, without our knowledge or consent. And the 26-year-old lawmaker classified all these payments as a, quote, legislative planning, food, and beverage expense.
Yeah, so in my job, I have to expense my spending, right? I have to categorize what I spend into a specific area from which I'm allowed to pull certain funds. I feel like if I sent my job a bill and classified it as a legislative planning, food, and beverage, and I was at Chick-fil-A and Bojangles, it would be pretty transparently rejected. I don't believe that they're sitting over a bunch of chicken minis and talking about legislation.
Right. And that also brings up another fair point. The oversight, right? Like,
exactly.
Getting to a point to where it is incumbent upon his constituents to call him out for the ridiculous spending. Like, that's trash, that's toxic, and that's not the way that it should be. Like, there should be more stringent oversight on how these dollars are spent.
Yeah.
So Cawthorn's expenditures contradict his go-to talking point of criticizing wasting tax dollars. In fact, in the very days his office undertook the spending spree, David Cawthorn tweeted attacks on purported government waste and spendthrift politicians, of which he is one.
Even Tom Tillis said last week that Cawthorn had, quote, fallen well short of the most basic standards Western North Carolina expects from their representatives. So if that doesn't tell you something. And you know what? We can cut this if you want because I don't know much about it. But also today I read that Chuck Edwards did the same thing and came out openly against Cawthorn. Now they're primary challengers, so the stakes are different. But I still think it's a new wave of Southern politics.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, and whenever we come back, our guest this week is a national trafficking survivors advocate and a public speaker who is doing the good work of breaking the stigma associated with surviving trafficking nationwide, Monica Griffin.
One of our sponsors today is the Honey House of Vintage, owned by our dear friend Mariah. The Honey House of Vintage features clothing and accessories from the 1950s to 2000 for all styles, subcultures, and body types. Open noon to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday. Light tailoring and alterations and consignment available by appointment. Find us on Facebook or call 828-388-5373 for more info. Mention the ad for 10% off purchase.
So a little bit of my personal backstory in the trafficking arena is I was a full-time model. I've been modeling since I was 2. I did tons of commercial work when I was 15. You may know some famous celebrities that came from my same agency. You have JoJo, remember JoJo? It's never
We love
too late,
JoJo.
you know?
Yes.
She came from there. Jesse McCartney came from that area. Chris Brown all came from my same agency, you know?
Oh, wow. And they're all right around, like, that's our age group.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the same time as.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And I pivoted a little bit differently. And there's a few ways I changed my narrative. One, I used to be a professional dancer, and I fully loved what I did. And I had the opportunity to go on tour with Chris Brown when he was with Sony Records years and years and years ago. And my agency didn't let me know because I was not the favorited at the time to get that gig. They were looking at somebody else, and they didn't get the gig. And it's still a dirty business. Like they say, entertainment's very dirty. I didn't get the information. Later down the road, I would find out that they wanted me to be a background dancer, and it was already too late. And instead, because I was young, I was 17, I just thought, like, my career was done. Like, I was dramatic. You're a teenager. You're still learning yourself. You're a little naive. So I was like, I'm just done with dance. Screw this. And I literally, like, tossed in the towel. I completely tossed in the towel. When I did so, I went into the modeling industry even further than I already was. I stopped doing the commercial work and the acting, and I really, like, pushed myself into a different space. And though I didn't do anything mainstream or to a space like going to Disney or Nickelodeon or anything, I was still in that space of the entertainment business, you know, the print work and the fashion and hair modeling. I mean, my hair has been dyed and cut and rebooted so many times in 10 years. And so I started going down a different path. I did my first topless photo exactly at technically 18. They had me sign a paper to say I was 18, but I was still 17. I was a month from being 18. I did my first topless photo.
Wow.
But, you know, I was holding myself.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't like my nipples were showing, but I was like, it was about the bikini bottom, okay? And so I was, you know, a little exposed.
And did you know what you were signing?
No. I also didn't know that same business that I was working for in this clothing business, the actual decal spelt out sex. I had no idea. Absolutely none. Completely I'm naive. I'm blindsided, right?
Well, you're naive and because you're young, but you're also being manipulated.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're thinking this is a glamorous day. I was with some high-end supermodels that day. We're on the beach. We're at this beautiful mansion. I mean, in my eyes, I'm having the best day of my life.
Yeah, I'll sign anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look back at those photos now where they made me look older than I was, and the decal spelt sex. It was 90s. It was bikini wear. It was tank tops. And it was these, like, little boar shorts, like, booty jeans, you know?
Yeah.
Back then, I was like, this is awesome, right?
Yeah, and
Not
when you're
thinking
young,
that.
you don't separate this is fun at the beach from these adults are being creepy and inappropriate.
Absolutely. And it was only a few years later after that, when I turned 21, that I fully, like, had, like, that floodgate open. I started doing nudes. And the gateway through that for me is I've always enjoyed art. I've always enjoyed impression art and exploring that. So for me, when I first started undressing fully, it was a space that in my mind I was like, oh, this is just art. This is just that space of, like, showing the body and how beautiful it is. And, you know, we have gorgeous Roman statues in Europe that show the body. Like, I'm okay with this. That would gradually, within a year, start to add sex toys and masturbation, and would lead me down this, like, completely different path. I would meet a man that I thought would be my boyfriend. I would later find that in life that he was my trafficker, and things started to quickly change. I mean, by 22, I had completely pivoted. And I was also in a very numb, vulnerable space at that time. I married my high school sweetheart very early. And by the time I was 22, I already learned he cheated. He got a girl pregnant. And I was going through a divorce at 22.
Wow.
So I was like, for me personally, I was already in a really dark space where I didn't feel my value anymore. Like, he chose someone else, started that family. This was supposed to be my forever after, my fairy tale. Fuck it. Like, literally. I was like, fuck it. I have my modeling career. Hey.
Yeah.
You know? And that just opened the door for me to become very emotionless and very much involved within just my career and just fully focus on, you know what, if people are going to think of me as this sex icon and this sexy human being, I'm just going to fucking be it. Would I know later that a lot of that was brainwashed by my agencies and photographers and managers that worked with me? Yes. Would I know that at the time? Absolutely not. I'm 22 years old. I'm going through a divorce at 22. Most people are just finishing college, you know? And now I'm in this space of like, oh, I'm sexy. Okay, this is what I do. This is just who I am.
Right. This is my value. This is where I'm seen.
Yes, absolutely. And that would start my rabbit hole. And by the time I was 24, I was doing full-on lesbian pornography for Pornhub and RedTube. I was doing things with, I can't name the other websites, but things with fetishes, etc., and fully just embracing this sex person that I was. I would find out later of the imprisonment that I went through was actually imprisonment, and it wasn't this, quote, safe house to live in for models. And then on top of this, what I'm trying to do in breaking the stigma and the experience I went through is no one saw this, right?
Right.
I had fans. I had Facebook. I was on print. Hell, I was part of a few major publications as a model. I was a cover girl for one of them. No one knew of the trials I was going through behind the camera and what was asked of me. I can't tell you how many times I would finish a set nude or in lingerie and the photographer was like, hey, can I finish? I'll give you an extra $100 if I can just finish on your body. And I would take the money because I'm like, oh, this is just who the hell I am. Like, okay, this is it. This is it for me. I wouldn't realize till I was going through my healing, which came after being hospitalized, that I was so brainwashed. I genuinely thought that was my job. And so many girls are like that. So many girls who walk this same path that I have genuinely feel like they're in that space, that this is just my job. I work in sex clubs. I work with powerful men that take me to 5-star restaurants and private jets and to Miami and New York City. And I had this glamorous life as being like, I guess you say like the call girl or, you know, just something cute of that nature.
Or like an escort.
An escort, yes. And not realizing like all that I was doing was unhealthy and toxic. Because in the industry, sex sells, right? You're completely in that mindset. We have so many major magazines that sex sells. You see it in our grocery stores every single day on covers of, you know, bikini wear and topless. And heck, even some of our health magazines are sexual on the front cover.
Yep.
It's around us all the time. So when you're in your 20s and you're just, quote, living life, you're like, hell yeah, I'm just one of those girls, right?
Yes, I'm
like,
doing what they want me to do.
Exactly. And it would put me into the spiral I was unprepared for. And what's going to be shocking when my book comes out next spring is I can guarantee you there's going to be a few exes that read this book, or at least I hope they do, who realize I was going through all this while dating them, and I would keep that mask up. I would keep a mask up. Wow. There are individuals out there who are going to read this book and be like, I remember as a marketing consultant, or I remember as a videographer manager, or I remember her as a studio manager, and not even put the pieces of the puzzle together that I had a completely different life.
Oh my God, wow.
And that's a big part of me breaking the stigma is like, it's not about this cinematic film of, you know, like Taken or any of those. It's genuine real life. It could be your neighbor and you don't even fucking know it.
Right.
It could be the barista who's working in the mornings to just feel normal, have a normal job while doing other things, and she's too scared. And that's a huge part of this too. Let me just shift that. I can't tell you many times people are like, well, why'd you not get out? You know, it was just so easy. I'm like, you're dealing with powerful men. You are dealing with people who genuinely can scare you. They blackmail you. They'll even blacklist you and make you feel undervalued to an extreme. And that time, you don't think you have a choice. You don't think you can just walk away. And the only reason I got lucky to do so is because I was hospitalized, which is honestly, I'm one of a few who was able to get out because of being hospitalized. There are many women out there who get hospitalized and their traffickers waiting for them outside the hospital to start all over again. I don't know why or how or God's giving gift, the universe's miracles, how that ended for me so quickly, but it did. I still don't understand that. And even my experiences aren't as extreme as some other women, and I don't want to take that away from them either. My purpose here in breaking the stigma and being this survivor and being this advocate and public speaker that I will continue to be is letting other survivors know that their story matters too. That each individual woman, man, queer community, because the genres are endless in trafficking. They really are. Mm-hmm. Do your research. I mean, the genres and then subcategories are endless. All have a beautiful fingerprint and story to tell of their experience and trauma that could truly not only create awareness, but really create change. And if we all, how I see it is if we all stay in our own lanes with our stories and with our experience, but build these bridges between each of them, do you see how powerful that would be if we all shifted together in the same wave? Like, how powerful that would be?
Yeah, I love that metaphor of staying in our own lanes but building bridges to connect each other. I don't own anybody else's story, but I do own mine.
Yes.
And it connects to yours.
Yes.
I think that's a really good visual for what we try to do when we try to build community through shared traumas like that.
Yes. And you know where it starts right now, which would surprise a lot of people, are these trafficking awareness nonprofits. Most of them are not even survivor-led. Most of them don't even have a survivor that works with them. It's volunteer-based. It's what they found on Google to build awareness. And because of that, when they do have survivors come through, I can't tell you how often, scary how often I get calls, because I'm also a life coach for survivors. I help women pivot in their traumas. I can't tell you how often I get a call from them and be like, hey, I was just working with a nonprofit and they completely devalued my story and me. I can't tell you how often that happens. And it does.
In a nonprofit that is supposed to be raising awareness?
Yes. That victim card gets thrown back in our face all the fucking time. And that's my job and my purpose to fucking break that. Because being a survivor, I found identity in myself for the first time. Think of it this way. Let me paint a picture. So I just discussed in detail like my life and modeling, the glamorous, hey, I was a sex icon, woohoo, right? But I also described the trauma that went with that, correct? Right. When I left all that, it was abrupt, okay? I no longer had an identity. This person I was that was my stage name or my alias names were no longer part of me of something that I was with from the time I was 21 to almost 26. Gone in a blink of an eye. And I'm having to completely restart my life again. Now, yes, did I speak that I also was did marketing and other businesses as an entrepreneur? Yes. But I relied on those other aliases and identities to know me because I had everything, well, how I saw it at the time was I had everything categorized by a character that I played. I never understood my most authentic self at all. So when I would come forward to learn I was trafficked, and I was a survivor of it, that was the first time someone like held my hand and said, hey, I see you. Hey, it's okay, you have an identity now. Let's take this journey together. I never had that before. And the only way I got to where I was, even in that moment, is I started therapy out of the blue. I really thought I could focus and do this on my own when I got out. I was like, I'm strong enough. I've been through the pits of hell. My body has been used and abused. Like, what else can the universe throw at me? I got this, right? Like, I'm independent. I got this. I can do this on my own. In that time, I would get pregnant, have my miracle, absolute miracle, and I would attempt to have a marriage with someone, and it wasn't a healthy one at all. It was still very toxic. I was still marrying that toxicity in my life. And my daughter was about 10 months old, and I had a gun to my head. I was ready. I recently saw a text on my husband's phone that he left at home that day that said, "I wish he never married her again." And I was already going through some extreme postpartum depression, which, by the way, guys, if you're listening to, never underestimate a woman who says they have postpartum depression. Please don't.
Amen.
It's genuinely an identity crisis. It's genuinely a space where they thought they were one person and now they're trying to balance who they were before a child and be a mother at the same time. And I was very much in that dark space. And my daughter from the other room said my name, Mama, at 10 months old, or what I would think was Mama. I'm assuming it was. I'm going
We're
with
gonna
that.
say it was
It's
Mama.
right?
Yep.
And I could take my life right now, and she could live this life with my husband. Or I could turn my life around right now and fix everything to be the purpose, the superwoman, the Wonder Woman of her life, to let her know that women can change. Women can make a mark. And I did so. I started my first therapy session within a week. And I was going to therapy twice a week. I was with my therapist for 4 years, seeing her every week for 4 years.
Good for you.
And in that time, I got back into community work. I became a community advocate. That is when that space opened up for me to work with my first trafficking nonprofit and be recognized as a survivor advocate and be a public speaker for them and raise awareness and education. And that would shift me into the nonprofit I've now been with for 4 years. And as of May 7th, I'm very excited to say, as of May 7th, I will be on the board of directors for that nonprofit.
Congratulations.
I've worked really hard. Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
wonderful. Good for you.
But to get there took some really dark turns. I go through a lot still. As I work as a survivor advocate and or what we can also call a lived experience expert, I'm triggered all the time. We have one right now going on in our district. I mean, I'm seeing those images on Reddit and Politico and all that. You don't think that fucking triggers me? Because that's my life. I wish that person would know, like, hey, you have a survivor in your district who is making waves to bring awareness on the underground sex clubs of DC and the underground sex rings and profitable sex that happens underneath Washington, D.C. I'm there, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep using my voice to make a difference. I'm just like, wow, like, you can't say that this happened a few years ago. When I see those photos, I know exactly where the fuck they are. I know the high. I know what that means, and it's funny how those things got leaked, because a lot of those underground spaces are so tight-lipped, you can't even bring your cell phone in there. There's a 3-step process to a lot of those spaces and a lot of those orgies. There's a lot of extra steps to take where your phones go into a locker or a fucking microwave. I've been in, granted, for me, I'm talking 8-9 years ago, where I was in orgies where all of our cell phones went to a microwave.
Wow.
And we couldn't touch those till the event was over, And so I just, I'm triggered by these things still, and I still see it out there. I mean, even down to what's going on in the spousal abuse with Johnny Depp. That's triggering for me.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's also bringing awareness that it's not one-sided.
Yeah.
It can go both ways. For me, trafficking and having my trafficker wasn't just a boyfriend. It was other models, too, that really pushed me to be in that space with them and made me feel comfortable, like this was okay.
Yes.
And this was the life, without realizing, no, this is not okay. This isn't healthy. This isn't life. This is a prison. And this is imprisonment.
There often are women or softening figures in situations like that. I'm curious what you think. I feel torn about like the, Ghislaine Maxwell's of the world.
Yep.
Are they victims or perpetrators or both?
People are going to hate me saying this, but they could be both.
Yeah.
I really do. My own personal experience with, if we're going to talk about Maxwell for a second, is there was an agency I worked for. We got paid to gather information on these private parties for powerful men. We would wear tiny little designer black dresses, look, sex sells, right? Mm-hmm. Sex the sells, okay? We would walk around these private parties that would be outside of DC, usually around the Dulles area, in one of those hotels, like way off middle of nowhere, with these powerful men discussing everything from stock trade to decisions to be made at the state level and above. And we would gather information and we would email that information back. And when we got that email, when we finished that email, that's when our payment would come through.
Whoa.
And
That's full
always came
political
through.
spying, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had no idea. Again, I'm just doing my job. I'm just a pretty face.
Right.
I'm 23 years old. I don't know anything. I think I'm just there for a really good payday.
Wow.
And to, it sounds shallow as fuck, but to use my body to get information.
That kind of lends itself to that old, like the honeypot trap, right? Of like,
Yeah.
some men will say almost anything, will divulge their deepest, darkest secrets
Yeah.
to a woman if they're in like this certain intimate or vulnerable situation. And I had not thought about it until now about how that is weaponized in sex trafficking.
Yes, all the
and
time.
How women who are in the people who are in the life are treated as pawns in that kind of big scheme.
It is. And don't forget, we're blackmailed, too. So if you even
Right.
try to get out, they're like, well, we already know that you went in and got this information. You know?
Right.
When I tried to come out back in 2016 about a trafficker who was still active,
Okay.
I found out not only he had one of these, quote, modeling houses, but I also found out that he was controlling even down to the electricity in the house.
Oh, wow.
So you control the
That's
electricity in the house for the
leader
women.
status.
Yes, to where they could hang out, etc. I learned that he had a whole black web on private cameras down to the bathroom. They couldn't even go to the bathroom
Ew.
without being watched.
Ew.
Okay? And so I'm a year out of the life, right? And I am livid. I'm also hormonal and pregnant too at the time. So like my emotions are everywhere. I'm like, don't mess with a pregnant lady. I swear I'm gonna fuck some shit up. Well, without knowing my knowledge, without knowing how this could come back and hurt me, I spoke out loud and specifically poked at these people by name. Well, then the bullying started. And it got nasty. So nasty. A few encrypted emails that came out to me said, we know where you live and we're going to come cut you open and take your child from you. You don't even deserve to have a child.
Oh, wow.
I'm like doing pregnancy all by my own at this time because my husband was deployed. I'm like, okay, this is fun. I'm doing all this and I'm like,
Yeah, it's totally fine.
it's
Just
totally fine.
getting very specific and horrifying and terrifying
But
death
that's
threats.
how extreme that blackmail can be. You know, the blackmail for women as survivors who are trying to get out of the life can be as in-depth and detailed as I'm going to come kill your dog in the middle of the night.
Oof.
I'm going to come kill your cat. Like, it gets that. They poke at your family, no matter how small or big. Some even lie, like, I know who your parents are.
Right. So
No, you don't. I use an alias name. I mean,
right.
some may, but it's just a manipulation game. It's a way to keep us quiet. It's a way to keep us with our heads down. It's a way for us to not even feel like we can identify as a survivor. That we don't have the right to. Because bullies will be there to tell us that we don't. And that we are just a victim card. But, yeah, I mean, the bullying still happens now. I recently went back to blonde hair for the first time in almost 15 years. In my natural hair color. I've been blonde, I've been platinum blonde, but never like to a space where I can actually look myself in the mirror and be comfortable with it. And right now I'm getting bullied for that transformation. 100%.
Oh, they're still doing that to you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I get it on a daily basis. That I'm using as a victim card. That, oh, you can't be successful being a victim. You need to stop riding the train. You need to, oh, we see this, quote, transformation, but are you really transforming your life? Or is it just a toy? Is it just a play? Is it, this, like, narrative that you're making up, to become your own version of famous now? I get bullied saying, like, oh, once in fame, always in fame. You're just craving it. Little things. Like, no, No, the way I see it, and I don't respond to any of these people at all, because one of my favorite sayings, is work in silence and allow the success to make the noise. Fucking
Yes.
live by that. I don't really give much information out on my social media platforms. That is, I would say, like, too extreme. I'm like, oh my God, I have a boyfriend now. Yes. No, I'm just not even that space. I truly monitor everything I do in those boundaries, because what I want to do, how I want to have this to blossom, is honestly, I want you to come to the auditorium and we're going to talk, and I'm going to talk to you, and we're going to work through this together. I'm going to discuss that healing can happen. I'm going to discuss that changing your narrative is possible, that those pivots you take are possible. You know, I moved here 3 years ago, and it's a small community here, and so I recognize that there have been a few people who have seen that my pivots have been, for some, they may think it's excess, you know, just in the space of, like, you know, you pivot from one job to another job to another job to another job to another job. I'm like, yeah, well, unlike you guys who were able to do this in your 20s, survivors in their 30s and their 40s who are just getting out of the life, they're kind of like reliving their 20s again.
Yes.
And then you add, like, being a single mom on top of it.
Yes.
And the balance of all that. I'm like, I'm just proud that I kept a roof over my kid head, food on the table.
That's right.
And still managed to keep our dogs and cat alive too. Like, I am just proud. I'm kicking it.
Congratulations. I'm
Thank
proud
you.
for you.
Thank
Hell
you.
yeah.
You know?
Yes.
But it's like, there's so many stereotypes and there's so many stigmas we have to break across the board, and there's still so much judgment that happens in our communities, in our world, in our nation. When is that gonna be enough?
Yeah.
When are we gonna stop and actually look at each other as equals? When are we gonna stop and see that healing is different for everybody, that changing the narrative for each individual is different for everyone, and that we are all these beautiful fingerprints? Because guess what? At the end of the day, we're born with this unique identity that comes on our thumb and our pointer finger and our ring finger and that great finger in the middle that I love to use, you know? And once we start seeing that beauty and that uniqueness that comes from our hands and from our toes is us, and we can see each other for love, for respect, that's when peace is really going to happen. But until we can do that, we're going to continue down this spiral. We're going to continue to have these problems. We're going to continue to have people in Congress and in our district who are utilizing women as sexual beings instead of equals, instead of powerhouses. We're going to still think of trafficking as something we can put underneath the rug because it only happens in the movies, and it only happens to kids or laborers or immigrants.
Yep.
I love that fucking narrative. You're like, oh, you sound like you might come from poverty. You might come from a really broken house. It's like, my dad was a legend. I come from wealth. I come from a country club lifestyle. I come from a private school. I am far from that narrative. Far from it. But guess what happened? I got in my 20s. And I started making decisions out of, honestly, like what I thought was right for me.
Right.
You know?
Right. And people take advantage of that.
100%.
Keeping you safe and recognizing that you were a child and then a young person who was in need of support and direction. They take advantage of it.
100%. Yeah.
And now you have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that you have the wherewithal to do it, especially knowing that you're still hearing this kind of language that, like, invalidates your growth or somehow makes you feel like the way that you're healing is not the right way.
Mm-hmm.
When we know that healing and growth are not linear, and of course it's going to look like getting different jobs because you're figuring out who you are and what you like. And heaven help the person who stops trying to live their life that way, right? To try to find the best, most authentic version of themselves that they can. You're setting an example that it's okay to keep doing that and to reinvent yourself until you're sure and to keep
Reinvent yourself
life.
several fucking times. I mean,
Right.
I started this journey 7 years ago, and I reinvented myself so many times over. I'm finally feeling like I'm in that space of like, oh, this is my authentic self. Okay, I got this. But it's taken so many pivots. And I mean pivots to like down to like hair color. Like figuring that out too, and finding that balance. So keep those pivots, keep pushing, keep doing you. And the more you focus on that healing, the more you focus on on your spirituality and what brings you joy, I promise you, you will see that difference in every level of your life. Throughout the community, you will attract what is good for you. You will be abundant.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. Is there something that you would like listeners to know as far as a call to action?
You know what? Yeah, actually, I'll give you the links. It's Shine, SHYNE. This is a nonprofit I have been with for 4 years. And what I love about Shine is we are flipping the narrative. We have the resources and awareness on trafficking on all platforms in all the categories, but our main focus, and I'm happy to tell you right now, we have 50 survivors with us right now. And the details behind that is we have 50 survivors who are entrepreneurs who are survivor-led businesses.
Wow.
And Shine is about the entrepreneur, the survivor entrepreneur. There's so many genres of survivor-led businesses, and Shine's main purpose is to bring that to everyone's attention and education. We have a 9-month program for survivor-led businesses where they get free entrepreneur classes weekly to grow their business, marketing, branding, logo, financial stability, business contracts, the works. It's 9 months, and then towards the end, every individual business gets to have their pitch be pitched to these corporate businesses. And at the end, one of those businesses gets a $5,000 business appreciation check towards their nonprofit, towards their for-profit, and be able to continue that growth. And I'm so excited to be part of that. I've been with them for 4 years since we started. And to see that growth, to see that we have 50 entrepreneur survivors building their dreams and their purpose, man, I'm so excited to be here for that. I'm so excited to be a witness of that.
Amazing.
Very happy. That's the cause. Like, if you want to help, I would please donate to Shine. We're breaking that stigma. We are breaking that stigma.
That is such important work, and we'll certainly link the details to Shine's website in our Instagram and on Twitter. Monica, thank you so much again for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by Oklawaha Brewing Company. Oklawaha Brewing is a nano brewery and taproom committed to brewing high-quality beer in a vibrant atmosphere and is conveniently located in downtown Hendersonville. Drop in sometime and check it out.
This is the part of the show where we shamelessly leverage our millennial identities to bring some levity in a segment we're calling What's the T9 Word? Bird. This week's T9 word is whoosh. So a photo has surfaced that has some liberals laughing at the ever-problematic Madison Cawthorn, who we are genuinely sorry to take up even more of your time with. But we actually want to focus on the liberal reaction to the photo more than the photo itself. For context, a photo of the conservative, Trump-loving, transgender-bashing Congress baby was leaked in Politico last week, showing him apparently on a cruise, definitely in lingerie, with 2 dancers draped over his shoulder.
The palpable hypocrisy has some on the left laughing, and we're not here for it. As Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, Democrat from Pennsylvania, tweeted, "You can discuss the Madison Cawthorn photos while not engaging in the same homophobia and transphobia that he's so well known for."
Aaron Rupar quote tweeted that tweet Friday and said, "It's not the photos, it's the hypocrisy." So for this week, Cawthorn and those who don't yet understand why we cannot contribute to a transphobic narrative are whoosh.
If you'd like to support our show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/fireonthemountain.
Thank you all so much for listening.